Hi, in this video, I'll show how government policies are impacting Chinese video game industry. Throughout the video, I'll be covering this topic in three parts. First, how the government affects the operation in industry. Second, government policies measure of the video game industry. And third one, Chinese government's policies are influence of video game. So, how does the government influence the development of the industry? Governments can implement policies that change social behavior in the business environment. Funding can be provided for the development of new technologies that can bring about the necessary changes. However, imposing more taxes or duties on a particular industry than necessary will turn investors off the industry. Conversely, a tax exemption for a particular industry trigger investment in that industry and may generate growth. Government policy will always depend on the current political culture. Policies made in a politically stable country will be different from policies made in an unstable country. A stable political system can make business-friendly decisions, boost local businesses, and attract foreign investors. The challenges posed by unstable system can jeopardize the ability of governments to maintain law and order. This has a negative impact on the business environment. At the same time, it can be seen from the survey that the government has more economic influences on the industry. The actions of some governments towards industries have a direct impact on the income of many industries. And also, research data shows that the industry with the greatest impact is customers, followed by governments. And the icon shows that more than half of the industry want the government participation to increase substantially inputs such as substantive sponsorship or as a financial support. A typical example is like China in the 1980s wanted to make the auto industry one of the main industries at that time and hoped to promote the development of the whole countries through this industry economic development. But under the culture at the time, China has just experienced the turmoil of the Cultural Revolution, which was not an easy task at the time. So the government set out to transfer auto industry technology to developed countries instead of developing the technology right away. Through such policies, the government aims to protect the domestic market, attracting foreign investments on the one hand and developing its own country's technology on the other hand. How will the government take steps to influence the video game industry? Typically, video games are rated using the PEGI system, where such ratings are determined by the PEGI Association. Video game ratings are designed to allow people of different ages to decide what type of games they should play, especially teenagers and children who have the right to play but should not be overexposed to the sensitive content. Since the government has a regulatory role, the public can make improvements to the industry by giving direct feedback to the government. For example, in the government response to the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee report on immersive and addictive technology policy paper said the UK government should add gambling labels and age restrictions to some games with real money on video game. The government's response to this said that everything must be based on evidence. Adolescent issues has also been one of the key concerns of society, and corresponding video games will be censored. Not only that, but some large video game companies will also make corresponding adjustments where it comes to monetary transactions such as loot boxes, so that teenagers can better understand what they are spending. In countries with developed video game culture, some governments will effectively disseminate information through such media. A good example of this during COVID-19. The government hopes that during the several period of the new crown, everyone can stay at home and take quarantine measures. In today's society, mobile games have become the media that most of them come into contact with every day. So the government will put this kind of new crown information in mobile games for the effective dissemination purposes. Not only that, but some companies have used this method to spread public health messages for the government in the past. Government's policies can also promote the development of the game industry. During the COVID-19 pandemic, most industries have been hit, including the video game industry. During this period, the government has launched the Bounce Back Loan Scheme policy, which allowed enterprises to apply for funds in a short period of time to allow the business to operate normally, and will be able to borrow £2,000 to £50,000 at a fixed rate of 2.5% annual for a maximum of term of 6 years. The impact of the Chinese government's policies on the video game industry. China's population base is very large in the world, so China's consumption in the game markets accounts for 30% of the world's consumptions. Such a large market demand has attracted many overseas markets. However, such a large population leads to a very obvious proportion of young people who are addicted to games. 30% of Chinese children are addicted to games, which is a very serious problem for China. In some parts of China, there will be training camps for internet-addicted teenagers to focus on training and to get rid of mental addiction to online games through physical training. In August 2021, the Chinese government introduced a policy on online game play time for minors. Minors may only play for 1 hour between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Fridays, weekends, and public holidays. In addition, the duration of online game companies providing game services to minors should not exceed 3 hours per day on statutory holidays and 1.5 hours per day in other hours. In addition, China has introduced a real-name system, which these minors play games for a central period of time. The system will force them to go offline. In addition to this, China has a very strict system for video game censorship. They don't allow most sensitive elements in video game, including politics and gore, because once game markets involve sin, they may unintentionally offend the Chinese community. Some games full of death elements such as blood skeletons require specific adjustment to cater to the Chinese market. This also caused the blood elements of many video games in China to be black instead of red, because people's characters will affect the minors. Many overseas games cannot be revealed or removed from the ships because of China politics, which also make the overseas industry very worried about this. In this interview, I will interview a technical artist at Netease, which is one of the biggest video game company, same as Tencent, and he will explain the impact of their market based on the current Chinese government policies on video games.
So if you want to put yourself into game industry, so this kind of policy will influence your employment, because when you are a student, you firstly enter the game industry. You are just a junior employee, so which means you have less experience in game industry, and also you didn't have too much the skills in some game engine or some making experience in game industry. So when you are not senior or some middle middle scale middle scale employee, you are facing a big problem. You are facing a big problem, which means yeah, you have a fierce competition with more more employee which who has more uh, experience. So in the other way, this kind of policy has also a huge impact on game content. For example, this kind of politics will have a limitation for game content. Uh, Sometimes you have to consider your quality, your image quality. You cannot make it too real because some picture, if you make it too flawless, it will hurt some children, and some teenagers will learn this kind of uh, dangerous behavior. For example, there are some games you can jump into the lake or jump off the building. So some children they have less experience, so they sometimes will learn this kind of behavior. So our country has a limitation about uh, this kind of uh, content. So this is also this looks flawless in China. So has a so this kind of game are not allowed to uh, publish.
So to conclude, first, the Chinese government's strict policies has led to the loss and difficulty of development of the domestic and overseas video game markets. And secondly, differences in culture and environment lead to a long way for Chinese video game to become a culture belt that can drive the country's development. And the last one, the policies in recent years also prove that the Chinese government attaches great importance to the video game market, and the status of video games has been improved.